Hello and welcome to Star Citizen Sunday with me, Ryan, aka Mac. This is a weekly show which covers everything from the world of Star Citizen over the past week. Links to everything discussed can be found in the description below, so let's get on with it. This week, 10 for the Chairman is back talking about character heads and customization. ATV is in Frankfurt showing off some of the planetary locations, plus Ivo Herzeg delves into the visual stabilization video we saw earlier last week. So this week, 10 for the Chairman made its return, but it's not like we know it from before. It is a special edition talking specifically about characters with Josh Herman. Now the first question was, will we manipulate the scanned character heads to customize our own characters? I know a lot of people are interested in characters. And the answer was that they have scanned a bunch of actors plus lots of employees, so they have around 160 heads now that have been scanned. The plan is to modulate and change our own player's head, not preset. So you pick a preset and then you you pick a base head and then you alter the various features like hairstyle, skin colour, eye colour, and basically you'll be able to build whatever face you want. To what degree, I am unsure. We'll have to wait and see that for sure. So next question. They are wondering about hairstyles and how customizable they'll be. They say there's lots of variation. They will have a huge selection. You'll be able to choose things like style, parting, length and colours and so forth. Again, no real demonstrations, but I'm sure they'll have something up their sleeves. So third question, will the amount of detail let me make my own doppelganger, so someone who looks exactly the same as yourself? And he said you should be able to find some facial features close to yourself, but obviously it won't be a 100% replica. But choosing from what they have available, you should be able to get somewhere close. So next question, how long will the process take to model an in-game render of someone's face? And they say a scan of a person fully, they have 50 cameras on this camera rig, which circles the person. They have 50 plus cameras. They take all the pictures, they then digitize the 3D mesh of the head as well as the textures. They do outsource this to a company called 3Lateral, who are the ones that worked on Rise, the game Rise, although they have said themselves that the Star Citizen head rig is the highest fidelity that they have ever worked with. Basically, they take an actor, prop them in the rig, and then they take 78 facial images of them making, 78 different faces. They have 400 plus blend maps. They have wrinkles, etc. So much detail on this. They have got to do a lot of work on eyes, tongues, teeth. Eyes and hair will be getting a lot of work soon. But what we see now is not 100% for the hair or even, the face itself. The goal is, they say, for the Squadron 42 characters to look as good as or better than anything that has ever been done. So next question, will it ever be possible to get backwards faces into the game? Now this was brought up a while ago, and I'd love to have my face running around Star Citizen, but he said it's possible, but it's a very in-depth process, so they need to, have the rig set up every time they do these pictures, and it takes 2 hours to take the 78 necessary pictures, but instead of 78 with if you were just to be a background character like an extra in a film, they would only need 15 images, so it could be a thing where they set it up where they have a queue of people who, I don't know how they choose, but you go in and you take the 15 pictures, then you get out, you take the next 15 pictures. It could be a good sort of quick way of getting more characters into the game. Now they said they have talked about it, but they've not made any decisions, so it's to be determined. So moving on, how soon will we begin to see the heads on NPCs in the Persistent Universe? Now they're getting a variety of heads into the Persistent Universe. They are hard at work on Squadron 42. Obviously, that needs priority. There are apparently 350 speaking parts in Squadron 42. So once the Squadron 42 system for characters are in, then getting it into the PU is much easier. It'll be so much quicker. They said they'll try to get some in for Star Marine, but the likelihood is it's going to be 3.0. We'll see the majority of them. So next question, will the faces we see on our characters, other players and NPCs be of the fidelity that we saw on the character in the Pupil to Planet video, or is it more simple like the characters in the Morrow Tour? Now Chris says just forget about the Morrow Tour. That is nothing like the level that they want it to be at. That was without good lighting, without blenders, so much difference. There's nothing like that anymore. The Pupil to Planet is actually an untouched tier 2 character. So if you don't know, each character is rated by tier. Tier 0 is your Gary Oldman's, your Mark Hamill characters. Tier 1 is the Morrow guy, which again, forget the fidelity that we saw there. And then tier 2 is this guy, but then tier 3 is practically what they would class as the worst sort of level of detail for a character. You won't be able to tell too much difference between each tiers. It's more based on facial density of the mesh. So a tier 0 will have 40,000 polys, whereas a tier 3 will have 10,000. But 10,000 polys is currently the top standard for cinematic characters in games now, so when you have a conversation with people in Squadron 42, it will feel like the equivalent or better there of a cinematic from another game, but in real time. So it's actually a very, very high level of detail for this. It's going to be so exciting. Anyway, next question. Will animations adopt to the characters as they age or suffer injuries? So, for example, will we walk with a limp, or, will we just look older? And he says, you'll definitely have animations for specific injuries, so if you're shot in the leg or the arm, this will be reflected on your character's animations. Characters aging, though, he says he's not really thought about, but it sounds like a good idea. Obviously, they have captured walking and running sets for characters of age. They have captured these walking animations, so it could be possible to move you through these aging animations. We'll just have to wait and see. It just sounds very, very cool, though. So next question, second to last question. What is the plan to stop client resources blowing up due to the incredible detail of the characters? Now, they said that when the tier 0 characters started out, the mesh alone used to cost around 300 megs. The textures were around 150 meg, plus everything else. Now they say they have the mesh and the texture data down. The mesh is from 300 megabytes to 30 megabytes, and for example, the wrinkle mass, which used to be about 72 megabytes, is now down to 6. So they are working on intelligent ways to reduce the data needed, and I'm sure they'll figure it out. So final question, what approach for character design is Star Citizen taking? Are we choosing from a number of preset heads or editing vertices within a specific range like in Black Desert? Now, we have heard about this for the first one, and it's basically the same thing. It's a combination of the both. You'll start with a preset, you'll choose your face, your hair colour, your eye colour, for example, or your skin colour. Then you'll blend using the other faces that are scanned and modify the base head, so you can alter the hair, etc. They are trying to blend heads together, so you can maybe merge a jaw from one head with the forehead from another head, so on and so forth. Again, until we actually see how this will work, it's hard to say because so many games do this already, but I'm sure Star Citizen will do it a lot better. Anyway, that was your 10 for the chairman. It's good to have it back. Let me know your thoughts. So, Around the Verse this week came from Frankfurt in Germany. They mentioned that there's going to be a new flight balance change where they're going to readdress the speeds and how the ships currently handle. This is coming to Eva Cotti soon. Hopefully they'll get that out of the way quick and then we can get on with Star Marine. But anyway, in Germany we spoke to the weapons team first, and they are working on some of the weapons for Star Marine. It's going to be a complete rework for Squadron 42. Now, these are still work in progress, so they're not 100% finished, but they're unifying the style between manufacturers. It needs to be more recognisable as a manufactured weapon. They're doing a polish patch at the moment with PBR materials, and as you can see, they actually look very, very cool. I love how detailed these weapons are, because they're going to be owned by yourself. You buy a weapon, you'll then own that weapon, and you can customise it as you see fit. It will be your personal weapon, rather than just one that you find lying around on the floor. Anyway, after that, they spoke about modular satellite systems. Now, this is a quick way of building numerous satellites using this modular building system, which we see with a lot of different environments as well. There will be specific types of satellites, and they'll be recognisable due to the modular pieces that are used. They have created a number of test modules, basically, and then fitted them all together. Now, these satellites will have things like shields, power generation things, all the same stuff that ships have, but the difference is these will be automated. Now, they mentioned that the silhouettes need to be distinctive so players can quickly look at them and determine what type of satellite it is. When modules get damaged as well, the specific function will go down. So if it's a shield module, then obviously the shields around the satellite will break or just go down, and then the player will need to EVA over to them and fix them. Very much again like how ships work. Now, in terms of gameplay, you could maybe steal data from a satellite, which will in turn, they could be breadcrumbs leading to a particular mission. The size and shape will be influenced by where they are in the universe. Satellites close to the sun will obviously need to have a lot of shielding and possibly liquid cooling, etc. There is a hub in the middle, and this is sort of the backbone of where all the other modules are attached. And so this will be where you need to go, very much like the comm arrays that we see at the moment. They will have an interior. We'll talk about that later in the Reverse the Verse. But things like the power generator will be dependent on the purpose of what the satellite is for. So military sort of type satellites won't have solar panels because obviously they can be damaged. So they're going to be specific, and they'll look different depending on what role they need to play. At the moment, we're just seeing it in white box, but I can see how it's going to look even better when it's finally fleshed out. So while we're on the modular systems, they talked about small planetary modular locations. Now, these will be things for like 3.0 and beyond. So things like camps and research facilities are obviously going to be needed to be populated around the planets that we can visit. They start with, at the moment, with a small exterior, and then they can switch between different interiors, and you can have specific roles for each research facility. They'll then add exterior assets. Later on, they will scale up to larger buildings. At the moment, it's just sort of 1 slot, and we can see 3 slots as well. 3.0 will likely just be small camps like mentioned before, and then obviously over time they'll grow to bigger camps. It's just a much faster way of building out locations for planets. Obviously these don't get procedurally generated, but on the planets that are procedurally generated, then they'll be plonked and just, put in specific places just to build out the populace. From there, we spoke to Tyler Witkin for the community update. He mentions that there's many bar citizens still going on. There's one in Denver, New York, and France. Visit the website tinyurl.com/bar citizen if you are able to attend any of them. It has all the information on there. Most valuable post goes to Utho Riley for his fan Star Citizen music. Very, very cool. His link to his YouTube channel is in the description. And for the behind the scenes this week, they took a look at the visual stabilization video, which they released a little while ago. And in particular, speaking to Ivo Herzeg. Now, basically, if you don't know, the first person is unified with the third person body. So the first person is not just a floating camera with arms sticking out. The first and third person views are you're still a complete physical person. Pretty much how the Arma series does it. I think that's the only other game that really does it properly. They did place a camera on, the character's head, just to see what it looks like, and as you can see now, it looks like a mess. It'll, motion sickness and all sorts start kicking in. This is not actually how humans perceive it. Our eyes and brain compensate for this, so your eyes will counter-rotate to compensate for the movement that the head does. So when you're jogging along, it looks quite smooth, whereas, you kind of feel like you need head bob, but your eyes are countering that as just a natural thing. Now, they stumbled upon how to fix this problem kind of unexpectedly. Apparently they were watching how birds, cannot roll their eyes like humans, so they need to keep their head stable. So there's a little clip of a chicken on screen where they're moving the body of the chicken around, but the head is staying completely stationary. So that's what they've done, is they've designed a full body IK system for all the limbs. So every limb and head and body is sort of a separate thing, and this allows for eye and head stabilization, creating a real smooth movement. Again, when it comes to this sort of first-person shooter aspect, bullets in most games spawn from your eyes and then go to the center of the screen, whereas in Star Citizen they spawn directly from the gun barrel, so wherever your gun is pointing is where the bullet will fly from. They mentioned that body motions will impact on your firing, so if you're running and shooting, it's not going to be very effective. You will need to be stationary to be able to fire accurately. Recoil also has a big impact. This whole video looks very, very cool, and I really can't wait to get our hands on this. This is obviously going to be part with 2.6, which is Star Marine. What we play now is nothing like what the FPS is going to be like. This is very rudimentary at the moment. They are working hard to get it playable and fun. Sort of a balance between Battlefield 4 and Arma. So, kind of perfect, really. But anyway, after that, we spoke to Chris Roberts just for a little second, talking about why it's important to unify the first and third person perspective. And he says it's important that what you see in first person is the same as what your friend is seeing. So if you are sitting next to someone and they are doing something, then you'll see them actually interacting with whatever it is they're doing, rather than them playing it out on their screen and you just seeing someone looking at something else, like at a screen or whatever. But also where you see your body is where it is. So if you're hiding behind cover, you will be behind cover rather than being able to be shot from the side of it. Because that's what happens in a lot of games at the moment, is you can think you're behind cover, but in reality the hitbox is sticking out from cover so you can start taking hits, whereas in Star Citizen, if your legs and your body is completely behind cover, then you cannot be hit. Anyway, this is nice to sort of clear up some of the first person issues we're having. Again, as time goes on, it's just going to get better and better. That was Around the Verse. Let me know your thoughts. So, on to Reverse the Verse. Again, coming from the Frankfurt office. They sat down with Ben Dare, who is the senior level designer, the guy we spoke to when they were talking about the modular satellite systems. Now, he wants to create interesting and diverse environments to populate the universe, as we know, and they're looking at modularity to speed up this creation. So when it comes to the questions and answers, the first question is, how do you choose which satellite to build? And they say they started with research into the current satellites that we have now, and they're looking at Star Citizen, seeing how they will be able to serve the universe. So the first ones are going to be defensive satellites, communication satellites, and science. These are the most distinctive types. It's a good test to see if the system is versatile enough to make those 3 types, and then obviously they'll expand on them as time goes on. Next question is, what's the difference between working on level design in Star Citizen compared to any other game? And he says that it's the authenticity of the locations. Everything has a purpose. It's not just there to look pretty or for aesthetics. Third question is, are the stations going to have interiors? And he says, yes, they will have internal play spaces. Like said before, the current comm arrays are a good example, but they will have like a hub module, and then they'll be sort of different depending on the satellites. Some will have bigger interiors than others, so it will vary depending on the specific type of satellite. Next question is, will the satellites be destructible? And he says the modules will be breakable and repairable. They said they'll be exploring if they can be completely destroyed, and if so, how will they be replaced? This is still ongoing, so it's not 100% sure yet, but it would be great because obviously it leads to more interesting gameplay. So, one satellite gets taken down, then someone needs to go out and fix that, someone needs to defend people against that, and so on and so forth. Plus, you need the supplies to build them. So much gameplay. Anyway, next question. Do some satellites use standard ship components? And they say, no, the parts will be standalone, but function in a very similar way to ships. So you can't use ship components on satellites or vice versa. Next question is, do satellites have piping system like the ships do? And will we be able to disable individual systems? Now they say yes, they're very similar to how ships work with the piping systems, and you'll be able to disable systems too. You can do this externally by firing at them, or internally by switching them off. And also something interesting he pointed out is that you can maybe plant a virus, for example, which I'm not sure how that's going to work in gameplay circumstances, but it does sound pretty cool. So a question after that is the construction system limited to 90-degree angles? Because what we can see from this is everything is on a 90-degree angle. And he says at present, modules have 6 points to grow them out. So what we've seen is a prototype, and currently it is 90-degree, but it's not necessarily all going to be 90-degree. They do envision it to look less Minecrafty, with just, everything fitting in uniform. Next question is, how far along is the prototype? Is it a few weeks or is it a few months? And he says, basically this was 1 month's work. The researching, the prototyping, getting feedback, etc. from the relevant people working on them. It shouldn't be too long till they start constructing, and obviously the initial designs and tests take a bit longer because they are researching it, whereas once they've got and finalised the process, then it's quite straightforward and it'll be a lot quicker. Next question, can players control a satellite in any way? And he says, at present they are designed to be interacted with rather than controlled, but controlling is something they're not looking at now, but in the future, they'll have to see how it would play out for a player, so potentially they will wait and see. Next question, will satellites have auto-defense capabilities? And they say yes, depending on whether it's a military satellite or whatever. It won't be easy to take a satellite down, they say. It will be firing against you or even calling in reinforcements. So it's not just a simple case of like the comm array, you go and switch it on. There will be reinforcements called. Some of them will have turrets or missile turrets, who knows. It does sound like some fun gameplay though. So next question, will satellites orbit their designated locations or their assigned locations? And he says they're not typically going to be orbiting a body. They are more objects that you can interact with in space, so not generally satellites by nature. Final question for this chap is, what types or purposes will we see in satellites? And obviously we know about the defense, communication, and science. He said it's practically endless, so a science satellite could be in a nebula gathering information. A military satellite could be protecting another satellite or a base or a network of them. Communications satellite could be huge or small depending on what role it's playing. He didn't touch up on any of the types of satellites, but I'm sure there'll be a lot available. So from there we spoke to Ivo Herzeg, who is talking about the visualization stabilization video. Now Ivo 12 years ago created the core animation system for CryEngine, which is why we have him on board. So this guy is responsible for the animation system in CryEngine, and well, obviously that's the engine we're using. It's highly modified, but he's doing the same thing here, making it work properly. So we couldn't have a better person on. Again, talking about unified rigs, or skeletons as they're known, traditional methods will be split between first and third, so you just need a simple rig. If you have your legs included, so if you look down and see your legs, then that's a second rig, and then obviously when it comes to multiplayer games, you will need a third rig so that other people can see you as well. Star Citizen is completely different when it comes to animating third and first person animations. Both generally need their own animations, whether it be first or third, but when they're unifying it, they need to share all of the animations, because obviously what you are doing in first person, someone else will see you doing in third person, so it needs to be exactly the same. He said it was difficult at first, but long term it was definitely needed. It also means there's lots of impacts, so they need way less animations. So Star Citizen currently has, for weapon interactions, about 50 animations. These will grow, just currently it's about 50. Whereas Crysis 3, which is a single player game, had over 1,000 animations for a weapon. So although Star Citizen will grow, it's not going to grow in that that size is going to be about 150 possibly animations. So there's far less that they need to mocap. He said that they need to build the proper foundations to have the scalability for the future, which hence is the reason for the delay for a lot of the production. This is why it's taken so long for Star Citizen, because they wanted to get the groundwork done first for all these systems, so that when it comes to pushing it out, there's not bugs and they can expand on them for future. It's basically future-proofing as well. Anyway, onto the questions and answers. First question, does the stabilization impact mouse responsiveness? And he says absolutely not. There'll be no impact on mouse responsiveness. Second question, how will stabilization work when looking through iron sights? And again, he says there's no big impact. When you're looking through iron sights, you just align the scope with your eye. Third question, how far along is visual stabilization? And he says, although it is tricky, he said it's tricky to answer, but he doubts the work is completely done. They're improved the EVA and the sights. They're at the beginning of what feels natural, so they're putting far more work into it. Sprinting, he says, needs attention. When sprinting, it doesn't need to be stable. But again, they don't want walking or jogging to feel like you're floating, so it's a bit of a balance, and they are working on it. Next question. Will head stabilization make character models look like birds in third person? And he says, no, absolutely not. It will be stable, but it will look natural. Second to last question for this guy. How does head stabilization work when you fall down? And he said it basically gets disabled as you fall. Also, it's disabled when you're transitioning between stand and crouch, etc. All these different animations. It's only used for normal walking and jogging. So it's quite intelligent, this system, where it'll switch itself on and off as and when needed. Final question. Shouldn't the visor bounce around a little? So the helmet visor. And he says this was an older build that they showed us. The helmet bouncing is actually the difference between EVA and on foot. Obviously, when you're EVAing, the helmet won't bounce, whereas when you're on foot, it will because of the kinetic motion that you're causing, but it's just not been implemented yet. Anyway, that was Reverse the Verse. Quite a long one. Some good questions and answers. Let me know your thoughts, guys. So, also this week, we had a Spectrum Spectator post titled Star Marine 2, in which they talk about the new movie sequel. Portfolio this week is highlighting Argo Astronautics, the company behind the latest Argo ships. You will not believe how long it took me to say that. Portfolio this week is highlighting Argo Astronaut. Portfolio this week is highlighting Astronautics. Portfolio this week is highlighting Argo Astronautics, the company behind the largest f***ing hell. And finally, Galactic Tour is back again this week, giving you the choice between the Aegis Sabre or the Mustang Delta for the best fighter ship. So that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for watching, and thank you to our subscribers, plus a massive thank you to our patrons as you make this possible. If you like what we do and want to help us make it better, follow the link in the description to our Patreon page to learn more.
To race on the cutting edge. To protect what you love. Say goodbye to the familiar and welcome the brand new Mustang, where risk meets reward.